Catherine White loved her only daughter very much and did everything in her power to make her happy. Monica resembled her mother in her youth when she was a real beauty, with thick brown hair and gray eyes that turned blue in moments of happiness. Catherine's life was not easy for several reasons. She was born and raised in an ordinary family. Her father worked part-time in a car repair shop, and her mother was a waitress in a roadside cafe. Catherine was taught frugality from an early age and learned not to pester her parents with requests for new dresses or toys. A smart and insightful girl, Catherine could tell who of her classmates was destined to become an outcast. The person turned out to be a boy named Richard White. His parents died in a car accident, and he was being raised by his grandmother. When Richie was little and before he started school, the differences between him and his peers did not yet feel so acute. But as soon as he went into the first grade, he immediately felt the contemptuous glances of his peers. Of course, Richie tried to fight for his place in the sun, but it was extremely difficult to do so alone. The children mocked the boy who had to wear hand-me-downs or things bought on sale. At the same time, Richie himself could not understand why the others had such a condescending attitude towards him. Because the boy was an object of ridicule, his grades slipped and his general self-esteem decreased noticeably. It just so happened that Catherine was the one who saw something in Richie that the others did not see. Since Catherine was a straight-A student, it was not difficult for her to help out a peer. That's not the correct spelling of that word. Take your time and try to remember, Catherine said in a manner resembling that of a seasoned teacher. To her surprise, Richard turned out to be a capable student and in a few years was able to significantly improve his understanding of all the subjects in school. By the time he graduated from high school, he was still not a straight-A student, but his grades were definitely good enough to get into the universities. After graduating, Richard and Catherine left the high school as a couple that had already overcome many difficulties and problems. Although some say first love is fickle and fleeting, this theory did not prove to be true in their case. After starting university, Catherine and Richard began learning how to run a business, which was destined to become their life's project. Thriving in college, Catherine did not only study but also worked as a tutor in her free time. At the same time, the couple did not want to rush into marriage. They deliberately got married only after graduating from college. It was then that Richard developed an aptitude for business that previously no one believed existed except for Catherine. After opening his first firm, the novice businessman felt that he had stepped into a new world full of boundless opportunities. Catherine did not stand by idly. She helped her husband in his every undertaking. Having inherited an analytical mind from her parents, the young woman could find a way out of almost any situation, whether it was business or a personal problem. However, the best news that Richard had ever received from his wife was her pregnancy announcement. On that day, he gave Catherine a huge bouquet of 101 roses. "My dear, now my life has gained even more meaning," Richard said with a smile. With the birth of baby Monica, Catherine gradually took a step back from business and devoted herself to raising her daughter. Meanwhile, Richard was approaching his first million, which for a long time was his #1 goal. Time went on imperceptibly. Days, months, and years went by. Monica grew up to be a smart and respectful young woman who inherited her parents' best features and personal traits. Due to the nature of his work, Richard was able to spend much less time with his daughter than his wife, who devoted herself entirely to her family and the household. As they watched their daughter progress in school, the proud parents were sure that Monica would have a happy and fulfilling life. After graduating high school, Monica, just like her parents, enrolled in the economics department of a local university. Most importantly, the young woman had chosen this path for herself without her parents' intervention. "Soon, our family will have one more economist," Catherine said with a smile. Richard gave a dismissive wave. In the depths of his soul, he dreamed of a male heir who would one day lead his financial empire. Despite his obvious patriarchal views, he loved his daughter very much and wished her only the best. It just so happened that being a successful and beautiful young woman, Monica, unbeknownst to herself, scared off young men who felt inferior to her. Monica, however, never behaved arrogantly or defiantly. She was the life of the party and never acted like a princess. The thing was that she was so ambitious and determined that many young men found her intimidating and were afraid to approach her. But as you know, exceptions only confirm the rule. It was Justin who turned out to be an exception. He expressed an interest in Monica, and quite expectedly, the interest turned out to be mutual. Out of all of Monica's acquaintances, Justin was the most mysterious. No one really knew who his parents were and how exactly he was making a living. Some said that Justin had his own construction company. Others said that he was making money on the stock exchange. It was difficult to know for sure. Monica herself preferred not to focus on this fact. First and foremost, she saw Justin as an interesting young man, and only then as a businessman or a broker. Monica tried to evade her parents' questions about her new love interest. She did not want to rush things and believed that she would eventually be shown the right path. Catherine and Richard, however, did not have as much faith in fate. Therefore, they wanted to meet Justin in person. After all, we have the right to meet him. Your father was also born without a silver spoon in his mouth. He achieved financial success only through hard work. Therefore, he appreciates people from all walks of life and just wants to meet your fiancé, said Monica's mom. Monica eventually gave in. To Monica's surprise, Justin took the news very calmly. It was as if he had long awaited an invitation to her home. In preparation for Justin's visit, Catherine prepared a fancy dinner, and Richard took out a bottle of expensive wine from the cellar. But when Justin entered their home, Monica's mother felt a sudden strong surge of antipathy towards him. It was a completely subconscious feeling that had no logical explanation. Something about Justin's eyes made Catherine feel uneasy in the way that she hadn't felt in a long time. At the same time, Justin behaved politely, as a result of which he was able to quickly win over Monica's dad. Richard suddenly saw in Justin the heir whom he had long dreamed of. When talking to his daughter's fiancé, the millionaire concluded that the young man had a strong business sense. Catherine was the only one who felt that Justin was being fake and only playing a role that he had mastered. Something is off about him. He is cunning and obviously knows how to think several steps ahead, Catherine thought while sitting at the table. Since Richard was clearly fascinated by the young man, it was useless to ask for his support. The businessman did not even suspect that Justin could be hiding behind a mask, which he changed depending on the situation. By the time dinner ended, Catherine was sure that Justin wasn't who he claimed to be. Keeping her suspicions a secret, the woman decided to make a retaliatory move and observe the situation from the outside. The very next morning, Catherine began to implement her plan. To do this, the woman decided to dress up as a beggar and come to Justin's company. Catherine wanted to see her daughter's fiancé in a different setting that could shed some more light on his true personality. Having chosen the necessary clothes, the woman put on special makeup that made her appear much older. Then she pulled her hair back into a bun and hid it under a faded beret. While in college, Catherine was involved in theater and therefore knew how to use costumes and props. Looking at herself in the mirror, she was satisfied with her disguise. Catherine would be unrecognizable even to her own mother. Finding Justin's firm was a lot more difficult than she anticipated. Not only was his office located on the outskirts of the city, but its outward appearance was also very unpleasant. This doesn't really look like the workplace of a successful businessman, Catherine thought to herself. Climbing the stairs, she deliberately began to shuffle her feet, pretending to be a sickly old woman. At that moment, Catherine saw Justin in her peripheral vision. He was leaving the office in the embrace of his secretary. Smiling at her boss, the young woman went up on her toes and kissed him on the lips. "Come on, stop it. Can't you see that there's people around? We don't want to getting back to Monica. That's the last thing I need right now," Justin said, grimacing. The secretary pouted in an exaggerated manner and then said, "And when will this all end? When do you plan to finally trick that naive fool and so we can finally go to Miami?" Justin smiled and shook his head. By his facial expression, Catherine immediately knew that the secretary was saying the truth. "So that's why you need Monica," Catherine whispered and hunched over even more. At that moment, Justin noticed the old woman and, grimacing in disgust, shouted to the guard, "What are you even doing at work? Can't you see that hobos from the street are coming in, as if this is their own home? They could be stealing office equipment, and you wouldn't bat an eye?" The guard was momentarily embarrassed. He then approached Catherine and led her outside. He did not want to offend the woman who was clearly already struggling. Catherine was already thinking about what would be the best course of action in the situation. First of all, she called her husband, who promised to immediately deal with her daughter's fiancé. Monica accepted the news of Justin's betrayal with her trademark calmness. As it turned out later, Justin was a con man on the prowl for rich brides, whom he would rob. Changing his identity, he would move from state to state in search of new victims. The fraudster's scheme was simple. Under the guise of business problems, Justin would ask his chosen victim to take out a large loan to repay debts from promissory notes. But as soon as the money was in his hands, he would disappear with the skill of a circus illusionist. Only with Monica White did Justin's plan come crashing down. Of course, this was only thanks to the intervention of her mother, who was not afraid to challenge the cunning swindler. When Justin found out that he had been discovered, he tried to hide in the house of his lover in a neighboring state. But Catherine foresaw this. She posted his photo alongside his full criminal history everywhere on social media. Monica recovered from the situation pretty quickly. She soon met a young man who had no ties to the business world, but was a kind and sincere person. Looking at the happy couple, Catherine sincerely hopes that she will never again have to go undercover as a beggar.